Hello, I'm Dr. Josh, and I'm not a doctor. Now the patient's on the slab and my scalpel's getting lonely. Let's operate, shall we?
When I'm not perfecting my invisibility potion, chasing the cats around the laboratory, or making my own short films and videos for YouTube, I'm a professional VFX artist. Hello. I've worked on a lot of movies you probably recognize. Needless to say, I have a decent idea of how to tackle a shot no matter how crazy the request may seem. That's part of my job. If someone told me they wanted a character to poke chimney smoke, turn it into a staircase, and then lead a group of characters up that newly formed staircase, I'd have a pretty good idea on how to begin tackling that. Now, if they said the same thing but added, "We're doing this entirely without touching a computer," now that's another story entirely. Of course, the movie we've got on the operating room table for today is the cinematic masterpiece, Mary Poppins. I'm going to go shot by shot through this sequence and give a guess as to how they pulled it off, as well as how we would approach a similar shot with modern technology. I have done some research into the behind the scenes on this movie, but full disclosure, I am not 100% sure how they pulled this off in 1964 without any digital effects. I think it still looks great personally, and I do have some ideas as to how they could have handled it. Let's get to it. In this shot, I'm fairly certain that only a small portion of the frame is footage. I think they shot the actors on some sort of practical rooftop bit and optically composited them onto a painting. This wasn't the same technique we would use today with blue or green screens. This was a chemical technique called the sodium vapor process, and it was very advanced for its time. Now, the matte paintings in Mary Poppins were largely done by Peter Allen Shaw, an absolute master of his craft. The painting in this shot also has some smoke elements added on top of it, as well as the actors and the practical rooftop. It's pretty easy to tell that it's a painting in the background, but as a kid, I fully believed they were on a rooftop, and as an adult, the surreal, magical quality it brings only heightens the shot, in my opinion. Today, we would actually approach this shot in a similar fashion. We'd shoot the actors on a green screen and comp them into the renders of a digital environment for the closest buildings and a digital matte painting for the distant city. Now, you could get away with a full matte painting, but as soon as shadows or smoke needs to interact with the rooftops, then you'll probably have a CG supervisor pushing for a CG build. As a DMP artist, though, I tend to err on the side of keeping as much of it a painting as possible. This shot is a little less complicated. I think what we're seeing is all in camera. The background is probably a big painted backdrop, and the smoke is really there in the scene. My guess is that there are some folks off camera with a fan that they hit the smoke with as close as possible to when Mary tries to poke it with her umbrella. It's not perfect, but I think it works. Going with our modern approach, since we already have the assets from the previous shot, the matte painting and or mid-ground CG buildings, we would probably just reuse that stuff in the background. We would still shoot the actors on a green screen, and the smoke would be a digital simulation in order to get the timing of the umbrella poke and its reaction perfectly in sync. Is this a better approach? Well, it would look technically better, but you would also lose all the unpredictable, chaotic magic of trying to get everything in camera. I personally prefer the imperfections of a practical setup, but I also know that modern VFX supervisors and directors would never allow me to do that on a big budget feature, so there we go. It is what it is. Next, we've got a standard reaction shot with a painted backdrop behind our actors. In our hypothetical modern version, we've been shooting on a green screen, and in order to make the most of our VFX assets, there's no reason to stop now. This would be a simple green screen combined with our digital sky painting. Here's where my research falls apart a little. I'm inclined to think that this smoke element is hand animated, as the steps look a little cartoony, but the underside of the steps looks so fluid and photoreal in places that it could be a combination of animation for the top and composited smoke for the bottom, but optical compositing was really difficult and complex. Getting the smoke to curve like this might have been really tricky. If I had to make a guess, I would say everything is in camera except the steps they're walking up are covered by hand animated smoke stairs. I read somewhere that the tops of the on-set staircase steps that they're actually walking on were covered with a thick black foam to help the actors behave as though their steps were a bit more cloud-like and less steady. Now, I'm not sure if the footage bears that out, and the claim didn't include any reference photos or proof, so I'm just throwing this in as a possibility. Today, the actors would be walking up green stairs that match the green screen behind them in order to simulate a digital set of smoke stairs later on. Digital copies of each character would have to be modeled, rigged, and animated. These are referred to as digidoubles, in order to allow the simulated smoke to interact with the digital characters. This way, when the smoke element render is placed on top of the green screened actors, it appears to interact with their movements. Next is a reaction shot similar to what we've already discussed. Now we're talking. We are firmly back in matte painting land. This background is all matte painting. The actors are removed from their footage using the sodium vapor process, and these are the, in my best estimation, traditionally animated stairs. and this one's using the same techniques as the previous shot. This shot is probably all practical. It's a rooftop spire set with a painted sky backdrop and some foreground smoke being pumped in front of the camera. Today, we'd shoot the actors and set on a green screen in order to control the sky's continuity, and the foreground smoke would be comped in. We could probably get away with using some stock footage smoke, but if the client really wanted it to interact with the set, we would need to create a CG copy of the practical set using what's called a LiDAR scan, as well as the animated digidoubles to interact with the smoke as well. Now, why couldn't we just shoot the smoke on set with the actors? Well, we could, but keying smoke from a green screen or blue screen along with actors, it's like there's a lot that can go wrong there. It's not going to look as good as if you had combined the two from different sources. It's really not. Now, how complex you want to get with this really depends on budget and time. Back to our standard reaction shot setup. And the glorious, beautiful, stunning, good enough to eat end cap on the sequence. A setting sun over a gorgeously stylized city. It's my guess that this is a fade between two different paintings, one of the full sunset and the other more of a nighttime shot. Now, these paintings were made on giant sheets of glass, and every single window with a light on has the window space lightly scraped away so that lights could be used behind the glass in order to shine through as the city lights up at night. This painting would be largely approached in a similar way today, albeit digitally. Two matte paintings could be made and provided to the compositing technician to crossfade between. The matte painter or DMP artist would provide what's called an ID map to the comper so they could light up the windows. Now, an ID map is essentially a color map that allows the comper to pick a single color to isolate so that they can control what happens with that color. In this case, I would make all the windows a single color on the ID map so they could just pick that color and have access to all the windows. A good comper will add very light touches to help a painting look real, some grain, occasional smoke, but nothing that intrudes upon the sanctity of the painting. A bad comper will not trust the matte painter and will slap defocus, fog, haze, color tinting, and all kinds of hackneyed tricks over what was once a beautiful image. When you see a terrible looking matte painting, it's usually just a really bad comp. And yes, I am bitter about it. All said and done, it's always amazing to me how these old films are able to overcome the limitations of technology and push the boundaries of storytelling through sheer creativity. It doesn't matter if it doesn't look perfectly real or is technically up to current standards, the audience will buy into whatever methods you choose for the visuals of your story, as long as those choices remain consistent and the audience cares about the story. You will be shocked at what you can get away with when the audience cares. Diagnosis?
Practically perfect in every way.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, give us a like. If you didn't, don't. If you want to see some of the episodes we've made in the past, check out the playlist tab on our YouTube channel page.
It's also all organized on our website.
On that website, use the contact form to sign up for our free electronic monthly magazine.
It's packed with behind-the-scenes breakdowns, channel data, polls, and even discounts on our boutique.